Hey, welcome to Fedup, the number one podcast where you can get up on all things Federal League. I am your host, Josh Stoll, and with us, our executive producer, Chris Miner.
What's going on, Josh?
Not much. Super excited about this episode. Chris, you've brought so much to this podcast just in terms of your effort and your ability, and you have just launched us to new heights. I'm so grateful for you, but you've really outdone yourself this time by allowing us to use your network and setting us up with a really great guest, Mr. John Jenness of the St. Patrick's Shamrocks. Unbelievable time catching up with him earlier. Just thank you for setting it up, because this is going to be a great episode because of you.
No, I think it's because of him and their story. I mean, we absolutely have had some tales to chop up, right? But I mean, who doesn't? But St. Patrick and what they have going on down there I felt like was a key thing to touch on, given what's gone on in the past few years with them. So it was really awesome to catch up, and like you said, there were a few yarns that were spun up in that interview as well. So it was a lot of fun.
Before we get to that, of course, we're going to bring you our standard segments that we like to do on a weekly basis here. We're going to do a scoreboard roundup presented by Max Bats. We are going to do our What's on Tap segment, where we will look at a couple of taps at the Tap Society, as well as what's on tap for the Federal League. We will do our power rankings. And as a added bonus to our power rankings this week, we are going to tell all 34 teams what exactly they need to do to be on the power rankings for the future weeks, or move up in the power rankings if you're already there. Of course, then we'll have our guest spot with Mr. John Jenness, and then we'll bid you adieu to go and play your games for the rest of the week. When it's time now for our scoreboard roundup presented by Max Bats, we have an episode coming up. We are going on location. We are going to film from the Max Bats manufacturing facility. You're going to want to see that one. The way that they make these bats is so cool, and the quality of lumber that they produce is second to none. So make sure you pay attention to that. As always, use promo code FEDUP to save 20%, or get those team orders together to take care of your group. You'll want to do that in time for the playoffs, even though they turn these things around on a real quick basis. But can't say enough great things about our home run sponsor, Max Bats. The first game we want to take a deeper dive into happened on Thursday night. It was game 1 of 2, the Lakeville Lobos taking on the Newmarket Northerns. Stats haven't really been put in on this thing, at least on the website. We were able to follow it a little bit on Twitter, but the story of this one was Derek Bergstrom. He goes the distance for the Northerns. They win the game 3-1. It was at King Park. Northerns strike first.
Right off the bat, Newmarket, it was cool to have Ryan on last week to kind of touch on what they have going on down there, because, and right away you see they kind of make a little noise taking a shot at Lakeville, who's been really hot lately. So I'm sure there's more to talk about as we go through the weekend here. But yeah, impressive starts to the weekend for Newmarket. 7
different Northerns record hits in that one. Story of the game for the Lobos might have been the guys that weren't there, as is usually the case in the Federal League. Who can you get there and when? It definitely has a big impact on the outcome of these games. But in round 2, the Lobos strike back. The Lobos traveled to the Fishbowl on Sunday and got the best of the Northerns in the rematch. Lobos this time scored 7, the Northerns 4. Nate Rost homers for the Northerns in the loss in this one. This game was tied in the 7th, very competitive. 3 runs for Lakeville broke it open, and that was the final margin. Lobos win that one 7-4. These two teams, maybe as expected, split over the series.
I mean, just even you touched on how that game kind of unfolded towards the end. The fact that Newmarket's sitting there 4-4 in game 2, ball a bounce here or there, we could be looking at something very different than Lakeville being 7-2 and Newmarket being 6-2, right? So really good. I'd say both. If I were both teams, probably got to be happy with the outcome, especially given the fact that Lakeville was short the first night.
Next game worth taking a look at happened on Friday night. The East Metro Mammoth traveled to Rosemount High School and took on the Rosemount Pipers. Tom Corcoran hits a 3-run bomb off Cliff Christofferson. Christofferson goes the distance for the Pipers, throws 116 pitches in that one. He gets the loss. The Mammoth prevail 4-1.
Mammoth just kind of chilling and doing what they're used to doing. that's a tough break for, Rosemount, who's just, kind of run into a tough week. Tom Corcoran, in case you forgot, he still plays in this league, right? 3-run bomb off cliff. Pretty impressive stuff. And
when they say tough times don't last, tough people do. Even though that was Rosemount's third loss in a row, the slide didn't last long for Rosemount. They come back with a doubleheader, took on the RC Rockets, where they were able to 10-run the Rockets, victorious in that game, 13-3. Rosemount got the better of Apple Valley, 11-5 in the nightcap. All of a sudden, Rosemount on a 2-game win streak and perhaps coming back stronger than ever. They have a much slower pace to their schedule over the next month, playing like an NFL team. They have 4 weeks in a row where they're only playing on Sunday. You got to expect them to have Christofferson fresh and available for every game in that stretch, and you can't count the Pipers out.
Well, that's assuming that he has a car that'll make it to each game because of all the driving he's been doing, giving us live feeds from all these random ass games around the league. But reverse the curse, huh? Have they reversed the curse? So
you slide them down in the power rankings a little bit there.
Right back down in the top spot this week. How's that?
Spoken like a true Eastern Division competitor, if I ever heard one. A couple other big games in the Federal League that were over the last week. Maybe a surprising one, the Eden Prairie Flyers got the best of the Burnsville Bulldogs. They have run into a really difficult part of their schedule. The Bulldogs lost 3 games last week. They lose both ends of the doubleheader by margins of 11-5 to Waconia. 0-3 for the Bulldogs over the week. They are now 3-7. They're too good of a team to be 3-7.
I knew what they were up against last week, but I didn't. Just seeing the 3-7 by Burnsville is really
fit.
No.
When those Flyers were in action again, and maybe in a loss, able to send a statement to the rest of the league. They lose to Tonka Bay, but it's just a margin of 5-0. Beating Burnsville and losing a narrow game to Tonka Bay, who has torched the rest of the league. Maybe Eden Prairie is a team that we need to pay a little bit more attention to as the weeks go on.
Absolutely. I mean, as teams start to make more noise, right? An individual performance, let's say, makes its way down the news cycle. We like to touch on things, but like you said, yeah, Eden Prairie's kind of showing up here where everyone's they've kind of been glossed over a little bit by us. So yeah, keep an eye on them. Let's see what happens from here.
Another game of note taking place in the Federal League. The Hastings Hurricanes all over the South Metro Saints, 14-5 at Hawks Baseball Field. Our own Chris Miner was the starting pitcher and the pitcher of record in that game for the South Metro Saints. What do you think? Was the storm alarm going off that night?
I'm sorry, you're breaking up. No. Well, I ain't doing that stupid ass siren anymore, man. I'm chapped. No, it was my first. I mean, when you said I started, that's all you kind of really had to say. But I will say it was nice to not walk 19 people. That's all I'll say. But yeah, Hastings hits the ball, man. I mean, I thought I made just trying to throw strikes. You're just like, and I thought I made some decent pitches, and they just pissed on a few of them, right? And they come as advertised, I'd say. I haven't had a chance to see them live, really, that much. So, a really impressive lineup, top to bottom. And, they casually had Pfeffer come in once he showed up from his town ball game to close that out. And he's the real deal as well.
But closer games in other spots, the Rail Splitters narrowly edge out the St. Anthony Norsemen, 6-4 at Palm Field. And the Minnetonka Saints had a close one with the Chaska Voyagers at Sunset Park. The Saints end up on top in that one. Steve Kleppen with the big hit in the 7th there to seal the deal for the Saints. Brandon Casadecalvo goes the distance and gets the win for the Saints.
Nothing. Hey, it's Klepp checking in the Fedup podcast for the first time, or maybe we said them already, but yeah, Klepp's back in action. We're talking about the Saints. I had the chance to run into Collier. He was playing with the River Rats down in Hastings over the weekend, and just sounds like they're starting to get their footing and get into the mix here.
All in all, there were 28 games played over the last week, a huge portion of the season, as we are definitely in full swing.
Whew, it's a lot, but it's a lot of fun. And, we'll have a little breather here towards the end of or beginning of July, but man, we're just ramping up, man. The games are actually being played, and there's upsets here and there and milestones here and there. So it's just a lot of fun to be able to cover this stuff as it starts to get busy through June here.
I'm glad you bring up milestones, because there's certainly one worth celebrating that happened over the last week. Ryan Marshall of the St. Louis Park Snappers picks up hit number 300. He is the Ty Cobb of our league in terms of throwing up the number to catch. Congratulations to Ryan Marshall, clearly a player who has been doing this for a long time and doing it at a very high level.
300 of anything is a lot. So 300 tallies in just playing Sundays in Federal League, that's pretty impressive stuff, and that's a testament to his longevity as well.
We'll keep our momentum going from the scoreboard roundup into our next segment, What's on Tap. We'll look at a new fresh set of 28 games to be played over the Federal League this next coming week. But before we do, I'm going to that tap wall at Tap Society, and the beer that sticks out to me immediately is number 11, the Foggy Geezer. It's a beer that I love, and I'll keep going back to time and time again. It's from War Pigs USA Brewing out of Munster, Indiana. Citrus and tropical hop varieties are gathered en masse to create this delicious War Pigs IPA. And Foggy Geezer, can you get a more apt name for a Federal League ball player?
I was just going to say, that's got to be someone's moniker by now, right? There's got to be a Foggy Geezer somewhere. Out of 800 some players? You kidding me? Well, I don't know. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to chime in on this, because, it's been fun with you doing it and all, but, I have opinions too, and I like to drink things.
Yeah,
so,
well,
thanks for letting me.
What are you filling your cup up with, Mr. Miner?
Well, I play for the Saints, and it's just been let's be honest, it's just been a shitty start to the season. So I'm going Devil's Kettle IPA, number 15, 6.8 alcohol by volume, out of the Voyager Brewing Company in beautiful Grand Marais, Minnesota, up the North Shore there. You might just find yourself wondering where half of it went right after you fill yourself up a frosty pint. So check out number 15, Devil's Kettle IPA.
I love it. You can find those two beers and 24 others on the rotating tap wall at the Tap Society. Do not forget Mr. Fritz's offer of having the tap wagon out at your games. He's agreed to do that at a very manageable price. It's even cheaper than buying yourself 2 cases of beer and filling up a cooler and lugging that thing around. It's in the middle of grad party season, so availability is going to be hit or miss, but reach out to him and see if he can make it out to your games, and if you do, you will have a social experience that is second to none. I mentioned we are about to undertake another 28-game slot over the next 7 days, ranging from Wednesday, June 11th through Tuesday, June 17th. The first one I'm going to start off with is one that hits close to home for me. It is taking place Wednesday night at Legion Field in Apple Valley. The Apple Valley A's will take on the East Metro Mammoth in an Eastern Division tilt. This game, the pitching probables will be Matt Grill and Tim Scott. It's going to be a game that I think will really go a long way in deciding the East. It will be enjoyable to watch. It'll be enjoyable to play in. And I think it'll be one that we'll have a few eyes on it league-wide.
I agree with you. I mean, both teams typically at the top of or whatever division they happen to be in a particular season, play ball the right way and can always kind of count on is to show up in big games, right? So even if, let's say, one team happened to be struggling, when you gear up for these types of games, being that it's on a weekday, I'm guessing there's not there's a few other games going on that night. We'll see if Cliff makes his way out to that one. But if he doesn't, maybe I'll scoot over and take care of that for you.
Another game of note taking place on Thursday night. One I'm watching is the Milltown Outlaws hosting the Vesely Vulcans. These are two teams in the South that are looking to define their seasons, in my opinion. Milltown had that tough stretch of games to start their year, but they found their footing a little bit. They've won a couple of games. Vesely has found some new life with some of the additions to their roster. They are 4-4. If the season were to end today, Vesely would find themselves in the Double-A. And I think this will be a game to watch in terms of what to expect from these two teams for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and these two teams kind of in the same boat as far as where they are in standings and all that. You hope that, I mean, these types of games are so important, as you know, you hope that the top teams, as they face each other, they pick each other off and kind of dent each other to help everyone kind of catch up to the top there. These are the games you got to take care of to be in the mix still for those, right? I don't know what the aspirations are for either of these squads, but it's one of those deals where I think you see how you finish off the season, and just momentum alone, regardless of where you finish, can do a lot heading into next year, right?
Well, there's a block of games going down on Friday, June 13th. Friday the 13th could be a scary day for a number of teams. A couple that I'm keeping an eye on: the Minnetonka Mustangs travel to Wintercrest Park to take on the Red West Legends. Winnable game for Minnetonka. They've already won a few. Can they continue to stay hot and notch another one in the left-hand win column?
A perfect opportunity for the Mustangs to kind of piggyback on what they've started. Red West, as everyone knows, has been struggling a bit. Friday night, nice night to gear up to play ball, so it's a cool opportunity for one of the other Minnetonka teams, right, to kind of make some noise.
A couple of games featuring teams within our power rankings. The Minnetonka Saints are active at Big Willow, taking on the Waconia Islanders. Waconia has been just off to a lightning hot start. They are getting some big performances out of Scott Marcourt, a player that I've had the pleasure of playing with. That guy can absolutely rake. But this will be a good test for both of these teams to really go a long way in deciding who's the best in the West.
Absolutely. I think, we've touched on, the Minnetonka Saints quite a bit, and not so much Waconia, just because a lot of the unknowns, right? A lot of eyes on this one, I'm sure.
The Minoka Grays have a big game coming up against the Metro Loons. Loons off to a hot start. They're 5-1. They've had a little bit of a break coming into this one, so you expect them to be fresh and give the Grays all that they can handle. Can that defense show up for the Loons? That game taking place at Castle Field at 8 o'clock.
Yeah. Fair or unfair, Minoka has gotten some flack for playing in a weak division, let's say. Well, they have 2 league championships and they have 2 state championships to speak of, right? However, for some reason, it feels like that follows them around. Now, this Metro Loons matchup is a really nice test, and depending on who they have on the mound, presumably Bougie, pick your arm out of the Minoka stable and their bats, right? It'd be a lot of fun to go watch that one.
Another big game the following night for the Loons. They will go to host at Big Willow the St. Louis Park Snappers. Tough weekend for the Loons, but an opportunity for them to really make a statement.
We've been trying to, determine, are they for real or are they pretenders? And this will go a long way towards giving an indication.
A spot for potentially the St. Patrick Shamrocks or the St. Paul Senators to pick up their first win on Friday. That game will be at Tony Stone Stadium at Dunning. Senators looking for their first win. St. Patrick looking for their first win. Something's got to give here in that game. So keep an eye on who is able to come out on top. Then fast forward to the weekend, we have the Newmarket Northerns playing host at the Fishbowl to the Rosemount Pipers. That should be an absolutely entertaining game. It's the only game of the week for both of those teams, so you would expect good attendance, good pitching. Bergstrom versus Christofferson, another huge pitching matchup that should be super fun to follow. 2 more games I'm keeping an eye on over the next couple of days. The Tonka Bay Lakers will take their 7-0 record against a team that is seemingly struggling for the recent part of their schedule. The Burnsville Bulldogs 3-7. I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say Burnsville gets it done in upset fashion and beats Tonka Bay, handing them their first loss of the year.
The funny thing is, you see a 3-7 versus Tonka Bay, and you'd be like, it wouldn't surprise me either. They're such a good defensive team, and they throw the ball so well. It's just hard to fathom. The bats might be slow. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me a bit. I'm with you.
Obviously, they'll have their work cut out for them. Could be Wolf, could be Brower. It's Tonka Bay's only game of the week as well, so you'd expect to get their best. The last game of the week I want to highlight takes place on Tuesday, June 17th, just before our next episode. The Saints will once again be in action at Big Willow, taking on the Rockford Rail Splitters. Rail Splitters may be another team that deserves a little bit more love when it comes to the power rankings. They've been a team that has just been so good year in and year out. winning double-digit games for, I think it's the last 8-9 seasons that they've done so. Minnetonka, 2 good games next week.
Yeah, we'll see what they have. We always hear about Brandon, and rightfully so, going for them. What do they have in addition to that to help them survive a potential playoff run, right? So I'm sure we'll get to see a few more of the arm options that the Saints have at their disposal start to come out and get more innings in the next few weeks.
Well, those are just a handful of the games that will take place over the next week. Again, 28 games will be played across the Federal League. Another massive chunk of games working towards the playoffs. Should be interesting to keep an eye on how it all plays out. Well, it is time now for our power rankings, an ever-increasing popular segment that is gaining some traction for us. Chris, I know you can't go anywhere in public without being hounded for your opinions on this segment.
I tried to go shopping for my kids' shampoo at Target, and all people wanted to do was chase me around the beauty aisles asking me, why don't you have Tonka Bay Rig tire? And I'm like, dude, I have a life. I can't go, it's all anyone wants to talk about. Hastings over the weekend, all anybody wants to talk about. So I don't know where you started here, Josh, but we're on to something. People are into it.
Well, I mentioned in the outset that we would tell all 34 teams, if you're outside the power rankings, we'd tell you exactly how to play your way into them, over what you can do over the next week. If you are in the power rankings, we'll give you a little bit of insight of how you can work your way up in those power rankings. So let's start first with, you need a winning record, right? If you don't have a winning record, you're not being on the power rankings. We'll cut it off at 8. We'll cut it off at 7, whatever it might be. So if you are 500 or below, that is task number 1, get above 500. So that will wipe out 20 of our 34 teams right there.
Humbling. Golly. All right. What else you got?
Well, the first team on our list, maybe on the bubble there, that could be looking to play their way into the power rankings is the Apple Valley A's. They sit at 5-3, just one game this next week. They take on the East Metro Mammoth. What the A's need to do is simple: beat the Mammoth. Just one of the best teams in the league. I think if the A's beat the Mammoth and they maybe get some help too, maybe Lonsdale has a rough week, maybe the Loons have a rough week with their couple of games, but I think that combination would get the A's into a 9 or 10 spot.
Winning some help. Gosh, I got to get my Carnacki board out and we can start really diving into the numbers. But yeah, beat the Mammoth. Hey, we've done it. It's possible.
I would agree with you. It's possible. We've done it in recent years as well, but certainly our group knows what a task that will be. We've already talked about the pitching matchup, so should be a fun game either way. Brings us to our next bubble team, the Rockford Rail Splitters. There is nothing the Rail Splitters can do, unfortunately, this week to play their way into the power rankings. They've got a Cannons team on the schedule this week that it's just should be take care of business. They've got another game on the schedule as well, taking on the Minnetonka Saints. But
wait a minute, Josh. So they can. Sorry, I didn't mean to start.
No, I like it. I love it.
So what do you mean? So what do you mean they can't do anything? They're a slave to their schedule. They win, they beat who they're supposed to beat. Why doesn't that enhance their case to move up?
It will certainly enhance their case to move up, but if they're sitting at 7-2 with a nice win over Minnetonka, I still have them really kind of on the bubble. I just think there's a lot of good teams in this league. Now should they continue that success into the next couple of weeks? But unfortunately, taking care of the soft part of your schedule isn't going to be enough to play your way up into that top 10.
Okay, I get it. But hey, guys, Rockford or Rail Splitters guys, feel free to play the games anyways this week, even though you have no chance in bumping up.
Brings us to our next bubble team, the Metro Loons. Simple for them. I would say beat one of the top teams in the power rankings and then be competitive in the other game. So if they were to win one of these 2 games, I think that would tell the league that they have the pieces they need to compete at the very high level. Then if they go out and they roll over and they get dimed by the other one, maybe it's a scenario where they don't have the deep enough pitching to be able to sustain long runs. But seeing them be competitive in both of these games, I think would put them solidly in the top 10.
These guys, I don't want to say anything negative about them because they all are pretty intimidating looking, and hit extra base hits. But I think that you bring up a good point about the pitching. However, this team seems to just score double-digit runs all the time. Can you just mash and survive? I'd argue you might, if you can score that many runs consistently. Now, how realistic is that with the pitching in this league? Who knows? But they've been doing an all right job at it so far. We'll see.
Well, they are averaging nearly 10 runs a game over their first 58 runs scored in that column, an unbelievable total, allowing just 21 with a run differential of plus 37. Certainly, they've done what they need to do through the first third of the season, but can that continue over a rough week on the schedule remains to be seen, but we'll be watching. We have one last bubble team to cover. It's the Lonsdale Jokers. They're sitting in my power rankings at 11. They've got the Chuggers and the Northfield Millers. Win those games decisively and maybe watch, one of the teams with a really difficult schedule over the next week falter. I think Lonsdale could feasibly be featured in our next power ranking.
Well, given the amount of movement and all the kind of different upsets here and there have been over the past few weeks, it wouldn't surprise me to see, one or two bubble teams make it in the next couple of weeks, just because of all the different anomalies we're bound to run into.
The reason I wanted to kind of expand this segment and feature that is because the top 10 really hasn't moved a ton for me. There's been a couple of losses and a couple of notable matchups between teams on the power rankings, but we'll start it here at number 10. I've still got the Newmarket Northerns. They split a couple of games with the Lakeville Lobos. I think this team is absolutely 100% for real. I don't think there's any question about that. I think they have the pitching in Derek Bergstrom and others to really be competitive in the AAA. They've got a big game against the Pipers next week. Win that one, and you will slide up several spots. At 9 and 8, we still have the same Saints and Islanders, respectively. They are both sitting in very similar spots as they have been all week. They're sitting at 4-0, less games played than most of the field. They both kind of have a softer game on their schedule to start their week, playing the Cannons and the Diamonds, but then they play each other, and I think the winner of that game is going to find themselves trending upwards. The loser might find themselves outside the top 10.
Right, and if Waconia, manages to pull this one out or comes out of the weekend unscathed, we might have to send a correspondent out there to get them in the mix, right? Just because it feels like they're one of the teams that needs to be reckoned with, right? But we'll see, I guess, after this weekend if they're for real.
Staying in the number 7 spot is the Rosemont Pipers. They've got the game we mentioned with the Northerns. Win that game, certainly they are going to reestablish themselves potentially as a top 5 team. I don't know how that team loses. Honestly, I know they bring a very full squad when they play us, because of some of the rivalry games we've played in the past. But the way they run bases with guys like Logan Pinckney, with Alex Mack, with Princeell, they are very fast. They look for every opportunity to take extra bases. Pitzel made this catch against us in the gap. That was just unbelievable defensive highlight. We knocked Cliff around the ballpark a little bit for the first couple innings. He'll like that. But then they just followed up with this guy Peterson, who I guess has been a Piper for the better part of a decade. And this guy is firm. He's in the low 80s. He's an unbelievable pitcher, had good command, good control, and it was all over from there. They just continued to lean on some really good pitchers on our staff, and they win that game in semi-blowout fashion, 11-5. It was close early, and it got worse as the game went on for us. But Rosemont is very, very, very good when they have their full complement of guys.
Like you said, they do so many of those things. It feels like when they get guys on base, it's just stressful. I don't know. Just being on defense is stressful against them. They had a little hiccup there let's be honest, it was a tough ass week for them, right? So to rebound and kind of finish the way they did was a nice sign for them, right? Because they kind of survived that stretch that they probably had their eye on all spring. And now it's okay, we're lining up for August, right? So we'll see how they continue to rebound, especially with the additional arms that are coming on or that are making their way into the fold.
There's just no soft spot in their lineup, too. You got the bottom up there is, guys like Scott Manwarn and Greg Sell, and they threw in at the 10 spot, Grubner against us, who was a standout at the University of Minnesota for for 4 years. So it's just those guys can absolutely mash. They have the pitching to go with it, and it's no secret that I'm high on that team this year. They remain to be my champion pick for the AAA. But for now, we've got them in the 7th spot. Moving to 6, we've got the Hastings Hurricanes. They quickly put a loss behind them. We're able to win a couple of more games next week. They've got the Outlaws this week. Probably not a ton the Hastings Hurricanes can do this week to move up to 6. They've been there a couple of weeks in a row. I think that's a good spot for them. We'll see if they can mix in, a new guy like Keith Myers, but they've got a really good team. They pitch. They have an unbelievable run differential as well. Through their first 8 games, they are plus 57 in that category. They have scored more runs than any team in the league to this point. It helps that they've played maybe a couple of more games, but they are a complete team, and I know you can attest to that too.
The arms that they have, some of them are, mystery to me, because I haven't seen a ton of them, right? Gosh, they hit the ball. You can't make mistakes against those guys. So there's some question marks with them as far as, big games. Can they pull out one against the Mount Fed team, right? And we'll see that moving forward. But yeah, they're impressive right now, man. That's about all I can really say. They look really good, and they come as advertised for sure.
Our first shakeup in the power rankings this week happens at the 5 spot. We've knocked down the Lakeville Lobos a few spots. We've got them in at 5. They split a pair of games with the Newmarket Northerns. Not really a knock in and of itself to lose to Newmarket, but I think that claim of how do they handle the best teams, how do they handle the best pitchers is definitely one with merit. Can they get their guys there? These are all stories that are very familiar to many teams, throughout the league. But I think when it comes down to it, in the biggest of games against the best of pitchers, Lakeville, in my opinion, might just be on the outside looking in. They're very good. I think they can win it all for sure. I would not be surprised at all if they did. But I think they've got some more work to do to prove that they can beat a really dominant ace on the hill.
I'm kind of on the other side. I think Lakeville's in basically mode where survive the regular season in a AAA slot and go from there. I don't think they're going to get too worked up about this or standings or anything like this in June, July, or whatever. But I guarantee when they play Hastings, they'll have their guys there, and we'll learn what they are. And I'm pretty confident I know what they are. I think they're playing the long game, and they're just rope-a-doping until we get to August and we see what the bracket looks like, and then they'll.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree at that point. It's a softer schedule this week for the Lobos. They are halfway through their season already. They've got the Millers and the Shamrocks, a couple of teams looking for their first win for the season. Expect the Lobos to be at 9-2. But expect them to probably still remain at that 5 slot. In at number 4 are the St. Louis Park Snappers. They are now 6-0 on the season. Kind of maybe on the heels of our guests, informing us a little bit of what they're hiding, in terms of some of the roster depth. But we have upgraded this team 1 slot to the 4 slot.
Yeah, they showed some of their cards last week, right? And we learned a little more about them. But ever since we first started doing this, everyone's been high on them just due to the sheer talent alone. So the fact that they don't have a blemish on their record yet, they are for real. And look, they're just figuring it out right now. They're not even humming yet. So we'll see. I'm sure there's more to come from them as they start to figure things out.
And at number 3, then, moving up 1 slot as well, is the Tonka Bay Lakers. Now, after I predicted their loss against the Bulldogs, they could be dropping, but for them, take care of business and maybe see either one of the top 2 teams in our spot drop a game is definitely a way that they would be able to slide up yet another slot.
Yeah, for the sake of the exercise, you kind of hope for chaos, right? But, we're realists as well. So we can hope for one thing and wish for another thing or whatever. You poop in a hand or something. I don't know. There's a metaphor there somewhere, but I'm plenty confident that the Lakers will still be kind of hanging out where they are right now. That's just
wisdom and insight and poop from Chris Miner.
Hey, farts and poop always get laughs. playoffs. I don't care how old you are.
In at number 2 are the East Metro Mammoth. They are now 5-0 with a recent victory over the St. Croix Valley Silverbacks. They continue to do what the Mammoth do. They have an unbelievable run differential. They are averaging more than 10 runs a game. They have allowed just 11 runs in those 5 games. Obviously, a large part of that is due to Matty Grill, but they've gotten some nice pitching outings from outlets as well, whether it be Nate Stark or Kenny Wangler, and as recently as Bill Hausman. Yet to be confirmed, but the Twitterverse has said that Bill Hausman threw a CG on Tuesday night, so
CG
congrats
Bill.
to him.
CG Bill? Oh my gosh. You know, okay. And it's fair. I'm not criticizing anyone. I'm not knocking anyone for how they approach things. You take care of your body. You take care of your arm. It's yours. Do whatever the hell you want with it. But the fact that he just rolled off and threw CG, you can't. That's tough. I don't care how good you are, or that's pretty good for you, Billy. Hey, meet you at home. Bill Hausman Realty. There's a plug. Just so you throw that complete game. There, that's solid. I love it. Sorry, I've just empathized because I hopped on the bus.
No, it's all welcome. A little bit of free press, I guess, doesn't hurt, but maybe a potential sponsorship for the 2026 Fedup season. Power Rankings is still lacking a sponsor, so maybe we can make a fit there. Big game for the Mammoth this week. We've already talked about it a few times. Don't need to mention it anymore, but we'll see just how that one plays out for them. And then in our top spot, again, the Minoka Grays, the 2-time defending champs, the 6-0 Minoka Grays, the really deep pitching, the really great hitting, the really talented, good-looking. What else do I got to say about the Mammoth?
They have nice uniforms, too.
Yeah.
No, I mean... Great. Look, I wish there was more we could kind of go into, but they're good. I mean, what are we going to say? I mean, until someone beats them or there's something crazy, I mean, they're really good. It's the reality. And they're going to be there at the end of the year, and someone's going to have a chance to knock their block off, or they're going to sit there and claim it their three-peat.
It's a team that's averaging 13 runs a game over the first third of their season. They've allowed just 10 runs in those 6 games. The only potential for parity here could be if the Fedup curse is real. So far, it has fallen flat and not affected the Minoka Grays, but we'll keep an eye on that for them.
We tried really hard, Kalina, last week. It just wasn't in the cards, buddy.
That is our power rankings for this week. We will probably spend a little bit less time on that for next week, but looking to see how that shapes out over the next week ahead. Well, it's time now to bring on our guest, and I want to thank you again for just connecting us to your baseball community and making it our own. I had a chance to catch up earlier with John Jenness of the St. Patrick Shamrocks, and he absolutely did not disappoint.
Yeah, for real. And it was nice because like 8 years ago, he actually reached out to me to try to get me to come play down here with St. Patrick. And I had no idea what the Fed was. And I was, whatever. I was in a different phase. It's nice to kind of come full circle and kind of circle back now that I'm been around for a little bit. So it was a really cool chat. And, I think the parts, St. Patrick's got a lot going on down there. Get an update since they've been gone for a year or two, right?
2 years. You want to try that again at the end?
It was just nice to hear, get an update on what's been going on down there since they've been kind of out of the mix for 2 years.
Well, let's go ahead and bring them on. Well, it is an absolute honor to welcome the first St. Patrick Shamrock in our show's brief history to the podcast. John, welcome to Fedup.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it. And it's good to be talking to you guys.
If you've seen an episode before, one of the first things we like to do with our new guests is ask what your baseball story is, and I am dying to get to know yours.
Yeah, I mean, I really didn't know anything about amateur baseball coming out of high school, so started with Eagle Lake in 1999. Was there till 2005, and then I moved up to Duluth Superior for my job, and ended up playing with the Bayside Vipers up there for a couple years, and then came down to Akopee, Minnesota for my job, and my best friend Bill Dunker plays for the Milltown Outlaws. Basically asked me, where are you staying? I said, just going to stay in a hotel. And he goes, no, you're going to stay with me. And at that point then ended up moving to New Prague. And that was kind of what started me on the roll with St. Patrick. Joined the board in 2007. started playing with them in 2008. Played for the St. Patrick Irish for 4 years. It was 08 to 2012. I'd hurt my shoulder, so I took a couple of years off just umpiring and around the ball field and stuff. And then Evan Hart and Jim DeGrosse of the Shamrocks approached me and said, hey, you're at 35, why don't you come play with us? And I said, if I could throw a ball, we'll see. And from that point forward, I've been a Shamrock since. So that's been my journey with St. Patrick.
Love it. There was a mention in your story of some time spent up into Superior, and I know another member of our panel here had some overlap with that.
That he did, Mr. Miner there. He we were one of their rivals, but I tell you what, anytime we played St. Croix, there was so much beer swilled afterwards that I don't even know how we got home half the time.
Yeah, it was a kind of just a background. Teams, a lot of us played college ball together, so we're all buddies to begin with. There's a lot of that down here, so it's relatable. There's a story that goes with a lot of this. I mean, it was basically every post game was a gong show, right? I'm gonna have to prep for later in this interview because I have a story to tell that involves this trophy that's back here. But yeah, we go back like spinal cords and car seats, man, back to our formidable baseball adult years for sure.
Well, back when we were young bucks, at least at that point, we're getting on the field and then afterwards not feeling everything after we get off the field.
Well, and this will be interesting because I played a lot of town ball. All my town balls from Wisconsin, right? It's different than it is over here. He has a unique perspective on having been on both sides. I mean, he was there kind of in the heyday of when Wisconsin town ball was kind of ramping up there in the northwest part of the state, like 10, 15 years ago, right? So it's nice to have him on just because he has a lot of Saints actually played in Wisconsin too. So there's a lot of us out there that kind of have seen both sides. So it'll be interesting to hear another person's viewpoint.
Well, I know in a couple instances there too, whenever I talked to Nick Garamoni was another guy that I played with. He managed the Bayside Vipers when I was up there. But, I played on both sides. I played in Minnesota and played in Wisconsin. And, it is absolute night and day when you compare the two baseball organizations. Minnesota does, not saying that Wisconsin isn't, but Minnesota is very structured. There is a ton of following. I mean, I know back in the day hearing stories, even in Wisconsin, that there were teams like in Mellon and stuff like that they don't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. Well, in the state of Minnesota, they exist and they never go away. There's just such a huge following, and we might be the state of hockey in the winter, but we're the state of baseball in the summer because there's such a unique following, and that's really what you need to continue to keep a team.
Absolutely agree, and I think the rest of the country is learning a little bit more and more just about town ball and the strength of Minnesota's base as we get into some of these national tournaments like the Roy Hobbs and mm-hmm. the tournament in Arizona too, as we consistently have several top teams in the end standings of both of those tournaments.
Yep, I would agree 100%.
That'd be great to bring you on to talk a little bit about the Shamrocks. I think it's an interesting story from the Lazarus point of view, right? Where your team folded and you were able to come back from it. But maybe just talk a little bit about some of the reasons that kind of led up to the initial, we'll say, downfall and the collapse mm-hmm. of the Shamrocks.
Well, I mean, for the most part, a couple of years ago, or actually it'd probably be like three or 4 years ago, we were starting to lose some guys. They were getting older. Some of them were migrating to the over 50 Emeralds team. Some of the guys some of the core group guys that we did have, some of them, their kids were getting into sports. They just couldn't make it to a lot of games. And we literally got down to where it seemed like we only had anywhere between 10 to 12 guys that would show up on a regular basis. And even a few of those guys were part of the over 50 team, and they were just basically filling in here and there just so that we had players to play, right? And we got to a point where we weren't adding anybody. We had guys from the amateur team that we were just trying to get to play, that they were leaving the amateur game and they didn't have any interest. Mind you, they were very good players too. So, I mean, that was just something that just kind of heartbreaking at that point. So we just had to make that decision to kind of take a step back and then try to recruit. I mean, that was part of it too, is we were still trying to recruit players, but we just didn't feel like we had the squad to be able to compete or even show up for games. And I mean, to be honest with you, if you don't have the numbers, I mean, it's just not fun, right? It's just a losing cause. You feel defeated going to the field. So over the last couple of years, that's what we've been kind of doing, is still recruiting and, really getting to a point that, okay, we feel, strong enough that we're going to be able to get back into the league. And, an unfortunate thing that happened with the Webster Wildcats folding, we had some conversations actually last summer with Tommy Larson, who was on that team, helping run the team. And he was telling us that they had numbers, but they just didn't know if they were going to show up. And, kind of got to us a little too late, because we were just playing an exhibition schedule the last 2 years, and we would have just got rid of our games and just went and played with them just to finish out their season. It just didn't work out that way. But after they folded, we kept in contact with Tommy, and he ended up bringing a few guys over, and I said, let's do this. Let's get back on the board. The biggest thing is we just needed to get back into the league, so we had to petition to get back into the league, and we were voted in, which is awesome. Excited to be back, and I mean, it's just excited to play, competitive ball in the Federal League. There's nothing like it. So
part of the state is such a hotbed for talent, and you see that in the Federal League, the impact of these town teams that are so good for so long, and they just feed right into the Federal League. I think the awareness of having a place to play once you're down to town ball has really caught on for a lot of teams. Why do you think that hasn't necessarily been the case in St. Patrick?
I think, for the most part, some individuals, they're going somewhere else in their life, right? They're having kids and they're starting families, whatever. They're getting older. And they want to be a part of, their sports experiences or whatnot, and in some cases too, like a number of guys, they've been with St. Patrick since they were like 16, 17 years old. They get up to the 38, 39, 40 years old, and they're like, you know what? I want to go do something else, whether it's fishing, maybe golf, whatever it is. They have other interests, right? And I don't fault them for that, right? But at the same time, they could still play. I mean, and it would be great to have them because they're great guys. And in some cases, we had a few of the guys that they live up in like Maple Grove or even further north. For a few years when I first came on the Shamrocks, they came down and they played. But again, they had young kids, and as they were getting older, it took away from that experience for them, and they just said, I just can't do it anymore. So maybe the heart isn't in it. The other piece too, I think, is that you got a small community like New Prague. It isn't like Lakeville, right? You got a lot of people that you can draw from. Well, you got Vesely that has a team. Lonsdale's probably got some, not just Lonsdale guys, some New Prague guys. Yep. Newmarket's got some connections, with New Prague here. So when you have that many teams that you're trying to feed, I mean, heck, even in the DRS with all those teams, I mean, for a small town to be feeding like a Union Hill, St. Benedict, New Prague, Vesely, Lonsdale, and some that you're in St. Patrick here, sometimes it just doesn't sustain itself, I guess you could say.
That's a great point. I know a few teams got stronger once Webster kind of folded up. A lot of those guys, have matriculated elsewhere. A lot of them kept playing. Just that little extra boost was enough to really re-inject some life and some vigor back into a number of teams. Sounds like yours included. Is that how you guys have really been able to come back? Is it the exhibition games that you were playing, kind of keeping the core, the nucleus, at least a little involved as a group, and then adding from Webster? Is that, would you say, the biggest two reasons of the comeback?
Well, absolutely. I mean, to be honest with you, when we were talking about folding, I actually had brought up the idea, you know what, how about we just try to get like a 10, 12 game exhibition schedule together? There's a lot of the core guys that have played with us for a number of years. They didn't want to see it die, but they also were like, in the back of my mind, I just thought that if this thing folds, it folds. I just don't know if we're going to be able to get it back. Yeah. Because once the word got out that we were folding, there were people that were calling some of our players saying, hey, if you need a place to play, you can play here. And that's the other uniqueness, obviously, about this league. And we're grown men. We're there not only to compete, but we're there to have a good time. And I mean, I really don't know of many teams out there that it's like you don't sit with them afterwards and have a beer, right? And you're just sitting there even trading war stories from back in the day. And as you hear in the background, you got glory days from, Bruce Springsteen playing at that point. But anyways, no, I that was in the back of my mind that we just needed to keep this thing going by just at least putting exhibition games in play, just so that we could keep something going and then hopefully get that recruiting in to bring some guys in. Oh, and the nice thing too, Tommy Larson, he really helped spearhead with, getting a few of these Webster guys to come play with us, and we've had such a great relationship with like Webster. We had a great relationship with like Vesely. I know that there was a time where they were kind of on the ropes too. Webster, we always battled back and forth with them every year. Every year, it was every game. Didn't matter what it was. We even had a trophy that we made that we were playing for every year, just a keg with a baseball trophy on top of it with the score written on the side of it.
Awesome.
But when it was the last game of the year, we'd always play at their place, and we would always do like a huge barbecue. And so it was like literally a full day event. Families came out, everybody got fed. I think that's something that we're going to miss, and hopefully someday maybe they can get it started up. But I think that relationship right there is what really kind of helped spearhead us to get the players and be able to get back in the league.
Speaking of trophies, this could be a great segue to introduce what is sitting on your side there, Chris. You want to share your backstory of
can you
what you
it?
have there? Yeah, bring that thing out.
All right. So a lot of people don't know, my pals and some of the guys from back home know, but my best friend passed away when I was 21, and he played town ball on our team, right? I think it was the first summer after he had passed. We did a memorial baseball tournament. All right, this is 2003, so I would have been 23, and it was really emotional. As you can imagine, a lot of the guys on all the squads that were there knew him. And so it was just kind of one of those things. And we won it in walk-off style against the Vipers. And then we had, they gave me this trophy, which causes a guy to just break down when he's going through what he's going through, right? Fast forward 3 hours or whatever it is after we'd been sitting at the field having beers, and we're going to leave and just like kind of getting our stuff together. Like, where's the trophy? And it's like, where did it go? Ben Jukic, Google him. You'll see all-star pitcher from Korea,
yep.
Lefty. He's in the area. He's on our waiver wire, Stoll, so don't even ask. But he ain't trying to play anytime soon, but we got dibs. Anyways.
Yeah, don't get me started on that, Minor.
I bet.
Don't get me started on that.
I bet. Oh, so you actually might have priority, but you guys folded, so that doesn't count anymore.
Yeah, well, yeah, okay, all right.
But he was kind of a delinquent back in the day, so that dude decided to steal the trophy and then just take off up the freeway. And I thought it was hilarious. But Garamoni, my buddy, and our buddy who ran the Vipers, he called him just chewing up, get the fuck back here, whatever. But, and then ever since then, we were close to begin with, but that got us, it was a lighthearted kind of thing on top of a really, really heavy emotional weekend, all that stuff. So it was kind of the perfect Ravens Viper way to wrap up the weekend, if you ask me. So it's a fun little story. Not a lot of people have heard that because that it's been such a long time. And I just found this thing in my shed like 3 weeks ago, and I'm like, I thought I lost it. So
yeah, you can't lose that, man. You got to keep that thing. That thing's got to. I don't even know why that's not in your fireplace mantle.
No. When I moved so much. It was and I lost track of it. And I swear, it was like losing your childhood home videos, right? You're like, I'm never gonna get that back. And I almost broke down when I found it the other day. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me! It's right there. So yeah, she's chilling here now. So that's the story, Stoll. I've actually won a trophy once in baseball. It's hard to believe, but yeah, we earned one right here.
I love it, and it just kind of makes you reflect on the whole network of the Federal League and how many stories and how many guys go decades back of playing together and who invited who, and just this crazy tapestry that has all come together to form this league that we're also so passionate about.
Well, the funny thing about that though too was, so when we had the Vipers and Ravens reunion game, it was the first one that we had in a long time. So it was a bunch of guys from the Vipers coming back to come play just one game.
Dude, there were like 40 people there that night.
Yes, there was. You guys had a lot of them. I was like, how the hell are you fitting these guys in the lineup?
That's 10 years worth of guys.
Oh yeah. So Benny Jukic was pitching, and Minor steps up to lead off. And I swear to God, first damn pitch, he freaking puts it over the left center field.
Second pitch.
So, no, it was that first pitch. It was the first pitch. But he just absolutely tattooed that pitch. And he's walking around the bases. It's like the guy never left the game. So then afterwards, that's when I was trying to recruit him to come play for us here in St. Patrick. I don't know. I'm a softball guy now. I can't commit to that. I'm like, dude, you're gonna regret it. But
Did I ever say I was a softball guy?
The door is always open.
Did I ever say I was a softball guy?
I don't know. You were just trying to give me every excuse in the book, I think.
All right, time out.
Yeah.
If I played co-ed D-League softball on Thursday nights in St. Louis Park. If I said I was a softball guy, somebody should have stuck a swizzle stick in. Just because, I mean, what's the point anymore, man?
Yeah, I get you. There's nothing like it. Trust me. Like, so we had a couple new guys that came. Tommy Larson had us recruited a couple guys. They never played baseball after high school. They were playing softball. They stepped on the field, and for a couple of them, it's almost like they didn't leave. And when they were a little wishy-washy before they came on the team, but once they got on the field and they touched that bat and threw that ball around, they were like, I'm hooked. I'm hooked. So
we talk about how St. Patrick, you guys, in theory would be the perfect vertical to have like a feeder system, right? Which is the ideal situation for any team that's looking for numbers in this league. And given the expansion, how many more teams it's just going to be more challenging.
Yep.
We're trying to figure it out. We have a lot of Wisconsin guys, so that's an angle. So when like Cosgrove, our third baseman, he joined the same year I did, and he just got a taste of it, and he was like, starting getting his juices back, and he's all of a sudden he's a Stockman's guy, so he starts thinking of who's around, right? And he's like, all they got to do is just come to a couple practices and they'll get it, right? And that's, well, for most of them, that's all it takes. It's just, what it's like being a homebody and like shutting it off for a few years. It's hard to come back out once you've shut it off. So that's the one thing, is just getting them out that one time.
But just like if you open a beer or whatever, you get that first sip and it just tastes so good.
Mm-hmm. Once it hits the lips.
Yeah, once it hits the lips.
Yeah, we've got a few guys on our roster who just thank me for staying after them. It took a couple of years to get them out, but once they kind of, get into the groove, meet the guys, wear the uniform, get those competitive juices going again. There's no other feeling. You can't get this in a golf league anymore. You can't get this in a D-League softball. It's a rare opportunity to play a children's game and do it at a fairly high level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree 100%.
I just wanted to get your thoughts. Let's just say we're hitting rewind to 2008 or whatever, when in Wisconsin, at least up north, you had the upper 13, you had the Indy League, along with the ones that are down here like the Prescotts and all those teams that they've been good forever, right? It's kind of faded up north since, it's been up and down. But back then, I mean, how feasible do you think it would have been to put together a half a dozen teams in that Minnesota, Duluth, Twin Ports, maybe in the counties a little bit, Old Man League up there, a Fed League up there? Because I know a lot of the guys who might eventually maybe tune into this just by word of mouth are jealous or envious that we get to do this, and there's a lot of people, just because they have to live where they live, they don't get to do it. And
Correct.
So, feasibility and all that stuff, I was just wondering, like, you've been up there, just your 2 cents on what do you think that could look like, or is that even a possibility, you think?
I think anything's possible. I mean, the bigger thing with some of the difference, like, for example, in the state in Minnesota, you have so many teams that are, at least geographically, it's pretty close, right? We talked about the old versus the new with the Fed. Back before we left, I mean, we still had like River Falls in our league, which is great. Loved playing on that field. I liked the groupers. The groupers are awesome. But it's kind of one of those things where geographically, I think it probably could work. You gotta have the following. You gotta have people that are going to want to keep this thing going. And I think that's what you see from team to team. There's always somebody that's going to be there to keep it going. But there was a point, even with our over 35, Kevin Hart was one of the guys that kind of spearheaded it for St. Patrick. And when he started the over 50s, that was kind of like, hey, I'm looking at kind of like moving away type thing, not being as involved with the team. So it was kind of like a three-headed monster. We had myself, Eric Solheide, and Mike Wald were running the team. And then Mike stepped away. So, it's been handed to both Eric and I. And then Kevin just kind of does a lot of the background stuff. He's kind of like the GM, doing a lot of the scheduling and all that kind of stuff. But we all work together on it. And the key is it's like anything else, even with an amateur team, right? You have to have a nucleus. Not only do you have to have a team, you have to have a field. And if you have that field, you got to have a following, because the following and your fans is basically what's going to, put money in your pocket to pay those umpires, to get the baseballs, to get the bats if you need it, if you need to replace equipment and everything. And I think those are some of the key things, I think, for whether it's 35 and over, the amateur teams, that's what just continues to keep it going, is the involvement. I'm not saying that they couldn't do it up there in Wisconsin. I just think that to a certain degree, you need those ingredients. And if you have those ingredients, there's no question that you're going to continue to be successful going forward and beyond.
Let's bring it back to the Federal League and the St. Patrick Shamrocks. Correct me if I'm wrong. The win this season for you guys is being back and being out there. It's kind of been a little bit of a rude re-welcoming to the league. You guys have struggled a little bit to this point. 0-5 so far. You've got a great chance to pick up a win next week when you take on the Senators. After that, the schedule gets a little tougher again, taking on the Lobos. But just talk a little bit about some of the differences you notice just being away for a short period of time, even as short as 2 years.
Well, I think the biggest thing is it's our continuity, right? Like, we do have a core group of guys, but we got with the Webster guys like Tom Carpentier, Tommy Larson, Russ Thompson, Robin Rapsis, just getting them into the fold and just trying to figure out, okay, where are we going to play them? What are we going to do there? And even a few of the newer players that weren't Webster guys that we added, we got to get that continuity back. I mean, we're there. It's just one of those things where we got to get that extra hit. We've got to make that extra play type thing. We're not that far off. And it's just continuing to grind. That's the bigger thing that I keep telling everybody is just, we got to grind. We're not killing ourselves. We aren't this bad. But I mean, it's one of those things where you got to keep grinding. And I know that it's going to come together. Even when years ago, when I was playing on the Shamrocks, we started off slow and it was frustrating. But at the same time, we started getting our legs under us. We started hitting the ball, making the plays, and we got back into it. And so, it's just that's just what we need to do. We just need to keep playing and keep grinding.
Yeah, and that South Division is no walk in the park. I mean, with Lakeville and Hastings and Newmarket and Elko and all of these teams that are winning a ton of ball games to start the year, even the teams that were supposed to be even down a little bit, like a Vesely, has found their way to 500. Milltown is really good still. It's not doing you any favors to come back and try and find some continuity, but another staple of that South is some of the beautiful ballparks that you guys have the luxury of playing in. You've got one right there in St. Patrick. Let's talk a little bit about Bonham Field and some of the projects and investments that have been going on in your town there.
Well, yeah, I mean, the field has come a long way the last 25 to 30 years. I mean, it used to be a pasture, we'll put it that way, and a snow fence. In fact, left field was a hill. You had to kind of run up a hill just to try to catch a fly ball. But since then, when I came to the organization, to the biggest thing, that conversation everybody talked about, lights. It'd be awesome if we could light this dang thing up. And it was always a conversation every year. Never really thought that it was going to come true. But since I've been there, we've gotten like the infield irrigation in there, irrigated then the whole field, put a lot of tile down. In fact, I think it's like 1,000 feet of it or whatnot. We demoed the backstop, put the netting in, and then after the Irish Estate Championship run, they took second in amateur. We thought it was an opportunity with the momentum that we had to start a capital campaign, and we had 3 phases that we wanted to address. We wanted to get dugouts, and we wanted to enhance the viewing experience for the fans, because obviously without them, we really don't exist for the most part. And then lights. That was like the last thing that we were going to do. But, unfortunately, we ran into some, I don't know, let's say political issues when it comes to like ADA access. So we had to kind of go through some of that tape and figure things out. Well, we decided to the first phase was going to be the lights. So we put the lights up in 2021 for that campaign. And on June 3rd, when we lit up for the first night game, I mean, it was just beautiful. Tears in your eyes. I tell you that. You never thought it was going to happen, right? Like it lights up the field and it's like, wow, this is amazing. And then playing over 35, getting to step on that field, you had to turn around and told the umpire, pinch me, because I don't think it's going to happen, right? So it was just beautiful. And then since then we put like an ADA accessible deck that's on top of the hill where our field is. It's kind of nice with how unique our field is. It's down in the ground. So you can sit up on top of the hill and you're looking down at the field and you can see everything. It's a really nice viewing experience for the fans. And then we just finished putting in new dugouts. And the nice thing about the dugouts, not only did it expand the seating area and the dugout itself for the players, but we did put a storage unit down there so that we didn't have to walk all the way up the hill to get the lawnmower to try to drag the field and stuff. So it's coming along. We'll put it that way. And it was a good addition to the field itself. And then we just announced today via Twitter or via X, that we are putting in a hitting tunnel / bullpen down our right field line here towards the end of the summer, early fall. So that, at least at this point, that'll end a lot of our projects or at this point, but that there's still a lot more to do, I think. And there's a lot more things that we want to do, but again, you got to have the money, and I think we've kind of tapped it out. But I mean, it's really a big applause to our fans, to the generous donations and stuff that we got, not only with time and material, but also the money that was given. I mean, you think about an organization that literally doesn't have the city of New Prague that's able to help fund some of that stuff, or like a Lakeville or a Burnsville, something like that, right? I mean, we're just 4 houses, a cemetery, a church, a bar, and a baseball field. It's amazing what we could accomplish with that to make that happen.
What more do you need than that list right there in town? I did see, I did see the wall commemorating some of the donations that you guys have there, and it was heartwarming to see. I mean, it was a real community effort. Donations starting as small as, I think it was $30, something like that. And then you know there were some bigger donors that that made an impact. But people just giving what they can and rallying around a baseball community, a small town America doing small town America is awesome to see.
Oh, absolutely. And we actually have an ATV raffle that we do every year during the summer, and all the proceeds that we gain from that go to improvements on the field. It's not to anything else. It's literally just to that. For the improvements that we were making over the years, just to lead up to have at least something to start with. Like, you don't just need a plan. You got to have some money in the bank to really kind of say, hey, we're serious about this. Like, we can do this. We just need help from somewhere else to do the rest. I mean, that's what's helped tremendously. And it's a successful fundraiser for us that, for the most part, it was a great idea when we started it, and it's just continued to sell really well for us.
Well, there you go. If you find yourself in need of an ATV and you're listening, reach out to John Jenness and the St. Patrick crew to have a shot at winning that and continue to add to an already beautiful ballpark.
I was going to say earlier that the way I heard about what was going on there, I believe one of the first ways was through television media, not just the online stuff. So I feel like this community is unique in that regard as well, where there's a project going on somewhere, it's going to get out. And so can you talk about, like, I know the Town Ball Tour came down there and did their show from there. Were you around for that? Or what? I mean, that had to be kind of a really cool thing to kind of cap off the journey of the overhaul down there, right?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to be honest with you, like having that just right on a doorstep just absolutely helped with the capital campaign whatsoever. Like, when they came down, I mean, we get a lot of fans at Bonin for a lot of games, but I mean, I'd never seen so many people on that hill and around the stadium. It was packed. I mean, it had to have been like, anywhere probably 700, maybe 800 people, maybe, or something like that. But I mean, it was great. They came down, they kind of helped pitch that and stuff. Obviously, telling the history of the field itself, the history of the town and the settlement that was there. That just kind of it spark plugged everything, right? But I mean, that's the essence of amateur baseball in the state of Minnesota, right? Mm-hmm. You drive out in the middle of nowhere, and all of a sudden, holy crap, there's a baseball field out here, and it's beautiful, right? I mean, Union Hill's got a great field, mm-hmm. Vesely's got a good field, and it's not supported by just a proper like town or city or whatnot, and it's just, you go all over the state, you're gonna find them. And that's the beautiful part of it. And, really for the most part, even social media has just really helped with not only getting the word out, but it's also helped with individuals that they might not be able to be at the game, but you can check like Twitter and they're doing updates, or Facebook, there's updates there. They're doing live feeds, obviously, and broadcasting the games. I mean, during COVID, when they broadcasted those games online, I mean, it was beautiful. But I think that's what's really kind of elevated the amateur game and really got it out there, was the social media, doing the podcasts like this. I mean, this is phenomenal. And I think it can only, we can only get it to new heights at this point and just continue to keep it rolling.
Well, John, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to come on. I know that I am not alone in saying that we are so glad that St. Patrick has completed this comeback. The league is infinitely better because you guys are a part of it. And we'll be watching and keeping an eye on the rest of your season. Wishing you a ton of luck. Thank you so much for being on.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the invitation. When Miner reached out to me, I was like, fucking right, doggy. I'm on there. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. No, I'm happy to be back in the league. I'm happy to be playing back and seeing some of the old faces that I saw, from a couple of years ago or whatnot. I'm not going to deny the fact that just, kind of felt lost just playing exhibition games, right? Like you're still playing ball, but you're not, right? And so it adds a lot more structure to it. It's one of those things where I tell people, whenever, if you haven't come to our field, come down. Get an exhibition game set up. You will not be disappointed, and you will have a great time. So I can't say enough about our field and enough about what we do out here. So it's fun. It's a lot of fun. So, and again, I appreciate you guys having me on.
The pleasure is all ours. And again, good luck the rest of the way. We'll be watching.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, an unbelievable interview. I hope you enjoyed that with John Jenness of the St. Patrick Shamrocks. I think the part that was maybe the most notable for me was that Chris Miner did his own Casey Johnson impression and homering in the first at-bat of a game, one of the first couple pitches of a game. I didn't know you had that in you to be Casey even before Casey.
Once upon a time, I did have it in me, but I don't like to talk about it because my wife tells me I talk about the past and my glory days too much already. So, but yeah, it's happened a time or two. You just got to ask the right people, and that's why I had this guy on.
Well, unfortunately for so many of us, Glory Days is really the best thing that we have going for us. So I'm glad that we got to relive a couple of yours through a really fantastic guest. Well, that is all the time that we have for this edition of Fedup. 28 more games being played over the Federal League over the next week. Should be exciting. We'll recap them for you next week. Until then, stay fed.
Welcome to Fedup.